My name is Clara, and I'm 38. For the last 5 years, I've been living a curated life, playing the part of the supportive wife to San Francisco's tech darling, Liam Walker. Our life is a glass and steel penthouse overlooking the bay, charity galas, and his face on the cover of Forbes and Wired. He's the visionary, the genius, the man who built Aura Ventures from a Silicon Valley dream into a billion-dollar empire. And I'm the woman who stands beside him, smiling, beautifully dressed, and utterly, completely underestimated. My previous life, the one I buried when I met him, was different. For 8 years, I was a senior forensic accountant in New York. My job was to hunt for ghosts in spreadsheets, to find the multi-million-dollar lies hidden in plain sight, to take apart complex, fraudulent organizations, piece by meticulous piece. I was a shark. I was relentless, and I was very, very good at my job. But I was burned out, hollowed out by the cynicism of it all. Liam, with his boundless energy and his grand, sweeping vision of the future, seemed like an escape. He was my new beginning. I thought our marriage was a partnership. I thought our love was the realest thing in my life. I had no idea that, to him, I wasn't a partner. I was a target. I didn't know that his genius was a house of cards, and his company was a ticking time bomb of fraud and deceit. And I definitely didn't know that he had married me with the specific, calculated intention of using my $40 million family trust fund as the emergency exit when it all came crashing down. He thought I was just the retired wife. He forgot who I used to be. And now, he's about to get the audit of his life. This isn't just a story about a bad marriage. This is a story about a hostile takeover. If you've ever been made to feel small, if you've ever been the one they thought they could just fool, you're going to want to see this. Hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. What's the most blatant lie someone ever told you, thinking you were too stupid to notice? Our life, from the outside, was a masterpiece of modern success. The penthouse, with its 20-foot windows and panoramic views of the Golden Gate Bridge, was featured in Architectural Digest. Liam was the king of the tech world, and I was his queen. We were the it couple of the San Francisco scene. He, the brilliant, charismatic CEO of Aura Ventures, a man who promised to revolutionize green energy. Me, the elegant, supportive wife, the one who had retired from her stressful finance job in New York to manage our homes, our philanthropic endeavors, and our suffocating social calendar. My role was to be a beautiful, intelligent, and, above all, uncritical asset. I hosted flawless dinners for venture capitalists and politicians. I ran his family's charitable foundation, turning their vague, image-conscious giving into a streamlined, effective operation. I was, in every sense, the perfect corporate wife. And I was, in my own way, happy. I loved Liam. I loved his drive, his energy, his seemingly boundless optimism. He was a force of nature, and I was happy to be in his orbit. I had been the one in charge of my own life for so long, the one who had to be the tough one, the cynical one. It was a profound, intoxicating relief to let him lead, to just trust. The trust I had brought into the marriage was a separate beast entirely. It was old money, my maternal grandmother's inheritance, a $40 million portfolio locked in a complex, ironclad trust. I was the sole trustee, but the bylaws, written by my deeply puritanical, controlling grandfather, were brutally specific. I received a generous annual stipend, but the principal, the $40 million, was untouchable. It was to be preserved, its interest skimmed for charity and my living expenses, and then passed on to my future children. It could not be used as collateral. It could not be liquidated for personal use. It was a fortress. It was my one, unbreachable safety net. Liam knew this. He had, of course, reviewed the trust documents with his lawyers before we got married. He had joked about it, calling it my chastity belt of a trust. But he'd always claimed to admire it. It's smart, he'd said, kissing me. It protects you. It protects us. His own company, Aura Ventures, was his baby. He'd built it from the ground up, or so the legend went. He was the media darling, the green titan, the man who was going to save the world with his revolutionary solar panel technology. I, with my background in forensic accounting, had offered to look at his books a few times in our early days. He had always laughed me off, gently, charmingly. "Babe, I love you," he'd say, "but you're retired. Don't you worry your pretty head about my balance sheets. That's what I pay a high-powered CFO for. You just focus on us. Focus on being happy." So I did. I stepped back. I let myself be the retired wife. I turned off the analytical, suspicious part of my brain that had defined my entire career. I chose to be happy. I chose to trust. My old life, the one of spreadsheets, late-night audits, and finding the lie in the numbers, it felt like a different person. A person I had been, but wasn't anymore. I had no idea how badly I was going to need her, and how soon. The first crack in the facade appeared, as it always does, as a tiny hairline fracture. Liam, normally a man of boundless, almost manic energy, became stressed. He was always on his phone, but now his conversations were in hushed, sharp whispers. He started taking walks at 3 a.m., pacing our cavernous living room like a caged animal. When I asked him what was wrong, he'd just wave me off. "It's nothing, babe. Just supply chain issues. Boring stuff." But I knew his tells. When he was lying, he would rub the back of his neck, right at the hairline. He was rubbing it raw. The boring stuff culminated in a late-night, panicked phone call that I accidentally overheard. I was in bed, and he was in his home office, but he'd forgotten to close the door. His voice was a low, terrified hiss. "What do you mean, the SEC is asking questions? That was a sealed deal. No, I don't have it. The last funding round is gone. You find a way to stall them, or we are both going to prison." I lay there, my blood turning to ice. SEC. Prison. Gone. These were not words from my new, safe, happy life. These were words from my old one. He came into the bedroom an hour later. He didn't turn on the lights, but I could feel the cold, panicked energy radiating off him in the darkness. He thought I was asleep. He stood by the window for a long time, just staring out at the bay. Finally, he turned and got into bed, his body stiff and cold. "Liam," I whispered into the darkness. "Talk to me. I heard you. What's going on?" He let out a long, shuddering breath, a sound of pure, unadulterated defeat. And then, the performance began. He rolled over, his voice cracking with a perfectly rehearsed vulnerability. "Oh God, Clara. I didn't want to worry you. It's a mess. A total mess." He spun a tale. A brilliant one. He said a disgruntled ex-partner was suing the company. A frivolous, baseless lawsuit that was, unfortunately, spooking his investors. He said the board was panicking, that they were threatening to pull their funding, that the company was facing a, quote, temporary but catastrophic cash flow crisis. "They're going to shut us down, Clara," he whispered, his voice breaking. Everything I've built. It's all going to be gone. All because of this one shark. I don't understand," I said, my mind still reeling from the word prison. What do you need?" "I just need to bridge the gap," he said, grabbing my hands, his own feeling cold and clammy. I need to show them we're stable. I need a loan. A short-term loan. Just to reassure the investors. Just for 90 days, max. Until this lawsuit is settled and the next funding round closes. And then, the ask. Clara, your trust. The principal. I know you can't touch it. But, my lawyers, they found a loophole, a hardship clause, a way for you, as trustee, to liquidate a portion of the assets for an emergency investment to protect marital assets. It's a long shot, but it's our only one. I need $10 million. $10 million. The number was so vast, so absurd. It just hung in the air between us. "Liam," I stammered, that's a quarter of the principal. I can't. The bylaws, my grandfather. It's not for that. It's for charity. It's for our future." "What future, Clara?" he shot back, his voice rising with a new, desperate edge. "Don't you get it? We don't have a future if this company goes under. I'll be ruined. We'll be ruined. They'll take the penthouse. They'll take everything. But 10 million. Liam, it's just a loan," he insisted, his grip on my hands tightening. "You'll get it all back. With interest. I'm the CEO of a billion-dollar company, for God's sake. I'm good for it. I just need you to trust me, like I trust you. We're partners, aren't we?" This is it. This is the in sickness and in health part, babe. I need you. He was crying. Real tears, tracking down his handsome face. I had never, not once, seen him cry. It was devastating. The brilliant, confident, unshakable man I loved was broken, and I was the only one who could fix him. I have to think," I said, pulling my hands away, my mind a mess of panic, loyalty, and a deep, cold dread. I have to talk to the trust's lawyers. I don't even know if it's possible." The next day, a new crisis conveniently emerged. I was at my bookstore, the quiet page, trying to breathe, trying to think, when I got a frantic call from Liam's assistant. "Clara, you need to get to the Bayview warehouse. Now, there's been an accident." The Bayview warehouse was Aura Venture's main R&D facility. I drove there, my heart in my throat, my mind flashing to industrial accidents, to fires, to Liam. When I arrived, the scene was chaos. Fire trucks, police cars, news vans. The warehouse, a massive, nondescript building, had a huge, gaping, smoking hole in its side. What happened? I yelled, running towards a frantic-looking Liam, who was standing with a grim-faced fire chief. "A fire," he said, his voice numb. He looked awful. He was pale, covered in soot, and his arm was in a makeshift sling. "It started in the battery lab. One of the prototypes. It just went up. The whole R&D wing is gone. Everything. Our entire inventory of prototypes. Gone." "Oh my God, Liam." I grabbed him. Are you okay? Your arm. It's nothing," he said, wincing. "A minor burn. I tried to save some of the research." He buried his face in my shoulder, and his body was shaking. "It's over, Clara. It's all over. The investors, the lawsuit. That was one thing. But this is the end. We're ruined." I held him, my own terror mixing with a fierce protective surge of something. He was right. This was the end. The fire, the lawsuit, the SEC. It was a perfect storm of corporate destruction. "No," I said, my voice firm, surprising myself. "No, it's not. You're a visionary, Liam. You can rebuild this. You just need help." I looked at him, at the soot on his face, at the desperation in his eyes, at the smoking ruin of his empire. Just try," he pleaded. "That's all I'm asking. Just try. For us." "Okay," I whispered. "Okay. I'll do it. I'll get you the money. I'll figure it out. I'll save us." He looked up at me, his eyes full of a raw, desperate gratitude. You will? Oh God, Clara. You're saving my life. You're saving us." I drove him home, my mind made up. My grandfather's rules be damned. This was an emergency. This was protecting my marital assets. This was my husband. That night, I sat at my desk, my hands hovering over the keyboard, ready to initiate the most complex, legally dubious financial transfer of my life. I was about to log into the trust's admin portal, about to start the process of liquidating $10 million, when my old instincts, the long-dormant reflexes of the forensic accountant, kicked in. A fire, a prototype, a disgruntled partner. It was all so dramatic. It was clean. It was the perfect excuse. A tiny, cold, disloyal thought wormed its way into my brain. What if I'm not saving him? What if I'm just the last, biggest mark in a long, elaborate con? "No," I whispered to the empty room. He was my husband. I loved him. But the prosecutor in me, the woman I had tried to retire, had a different code. "Trust, but verify." "I'm sorry, Liam," I whispered. "I have to be sure." Instead of logging into my trust, I opened a different browser. I initiated a deep, forensic-level audit on Aura Ventures, on Liam Walker, and on the frivolous lawsuit he was so terrified of. I was just going to make sure my loan was safe. The next 48 hours were a descent into the digital rabbit hole. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just hunted. I told Liam I was deep in paperwork, dealing with the trust's lawyers. A lie he readily accepted, too consumed with his own disaster to question it. My old skills, rusty from disuse, came back to me with a frightening, exhilarating speed. It was like a language I had forgotten I could speak. I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was a forensic analyst, and my husband was my case file. I started with the frivolous lawsuit, the one from the disgruntled ex-partner. His name was Mark Jensen. I'd met him a few times. He seemed like a quiet, brilliant engineer, the real brains behind the solar technology, while Liam was the salesman. The lawsuit wasn't sealed. I found the public court filings. It wasn't frivolous. It was a detailed 80-page indictment, accusing Liam of fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and systematic embezzlement. Jensen claimed that Liam had secretly siphoned millions in seed money, Jensen's seed money, into a series of personal shell corporations, effectively bankrupting the real R&D side of the company while building his own public, visionary brand. The lawsuit claimed that Aura Ventures' revolutionary technology was a lie, a hollow marketing shell, and that the company was, in reality, a massive Ponzi scheme. My blood ran cold. Ponzi scheme. The words from Liam's 3 a.m. phone call. SEC, prison. This wasn't a cash flow problem. This was a confession. The lawsuit was the least of his worries. If the SEC was involved, it meant this was criminal. I kept digging. I used my old skills to trace the shell corporations Jensen had named in the suit. Aura Holdings, Solaris Investments, Walker Strategic. They were all registered in Delaware, of course, with anonymous agent filings. But I was better than that. I traced the money. I hacked, yes, hacked, a skill I hadn't used in a decade, into the unsecured backend of one of his shell company's websites. And I found it. The real ledger. I stared at the screen, my entire world imploding. It was all there. Every fraudulent wire transfer. Every siphoned dollar. He had been bleeding the company dry for years. He wasn't just in trouble. He was the trouble. He wasn't a visionary. He was a common, high-class thief. The man I loved, the man I had built a life with, was a fraud. A sociopath. And the fire. The accidental fire at the R&D warehouse. That tragic event that had destroyed all the prototypes and research. I ran a search on the fire department's initial report. It was cause undetermined, but suspicious. The lead investigator noted the unusual lack of smoke damage and the highly localized, intensely hot burn patterns consistent with accelerant-based arson. He had torched his own building. He had torched it to destroy the evidence, to hide the fact that there was no revolutionary technology, that the R&D lab was just an empty warehouse. He had done it to create a force majeure, an act of God that would let him declare bankruptcy, blame the fire, and walk away from his investors, and Mark Jensen, scot-free. But he still needed my money. Why? I traced the wire transfers out of his shell accounts, and that's when I found the real debt. The siphoned millions hadn't just gone to his lifestyle. They had gone to her. A single, recurring, massive monthly payment to a Catherine Price. Who was she? A quick, dirty background check gave me the answer. Catherine Price. A 28-year-old artist living in a lavish, multi-million-dollar condo in Miami Beach. Her Instagram was a horrifying, glittering monument to conspicuous consumption. Yachts, private jets, designer bags, and pictures of Liam, my husband, lounging on her yacht, kissing her on a beach in St. Bart's. The timestamps were all from times he was supposedly on business trips to raise capital in Asia or Europe. He wasn't just a thief. He wasn't just an arsonist. He had another life. A whole, secret, parallel life with this woman, funded by money he had stolen from his partners, and now he was trying to use my inheritance to pay for his escape. I felt nothing. The shock, the grief, the betrayal. It was so total, so absolute, that it burned away all emotion. I was just cold. I was an empty, logical, analytical machine. He had married me for my trust fund. He had built a 5-year marriage, a 5-year lie, as a, quote, plan B. He had seen me, the forensic accountant, not as a partner, but as a target, a future mark, the ultimate angel investor he could con when his first con finally fell apart. And his confession, his breakdown, the fire, it was all just a pitch. The most elaborate, personal, and devastating sales pitch of his life. And I had almost bought it. The old, soft Clara was dead, buried under the digital rubble of her husband's lies. The prosecutor was back, and she was on the hunt. I didn't stop at the bank records. I had access to our shared, cloud-based home server. The one where we kept our files, photos, household documents, travel plans. I had always respected his private folders. Now I saw them as what they were, unsearched evidence rooms. I spent an entire night bypassing the flimsy password protections he'd set up. His golf folder wasn't about golf. His taxes folder wasn't about taxes. But the real prize, the one that made my blood freeze, was a folder labeled, simply, contingency. Inside was his masterpiece, his real masterpiece. It wasn't a plan to save his company. It was a plan to destroy me. It was a detailed, multi-stage plan B to be executed in the event that I refused to give him the money from my trust. Phase 1, the narrative. This folder contained meticulously gathered evidence of my emotional instability. Emails I had sent him in confidence during my father's illness, where I'd said I felt overwhelmed or depressed. Notes from our shared calendar, documenting the days I'd stayed in bed crying after my father's death. He was collecting my grief, cataloging it to use as a weapon. Phase 2, the expert. He had files on a psychiatrist, a Dr. Alistair Finch, a man with a very impressive, very expensive-looking website, who specialized in, quote, high-stress female executives. But a quick search on my part revealed Dr. Finch wasn't just a doctor. He was a hired gun, a notorious expert witness, known for providing whatever diagnoses his high-paying clients needed. Liam's plan was to convince me to see him, to get me help for my breakdown, and to get a formal medical diagnosis of instability. Phase 3. The coup. This was the legal prep folder. It contained draft after draft of a petition to a probate court. A petition to have me, his unstable and incompetent wife, removed as the trustee of my own $40 million inheritance. And to have him, my loving, concerned, and oh-so-stable husband, appointed as the new temporary trustee to protect my assets from my own erratic behavior. He wasn't just going to ask me for the money. He was going to take it. He was going to steal my inheritance, my reputation, and my sanity, all in one clean, legal, and devastating move. He had been planning this for years. I felt a strange, terrifying calm settle over me. I finally understood the full scope of the monster I had married. This wasn't a man in trouble. This was a predator. And he had, in his supreme arrogance, left his entire handwritten confession, his entire battle plan, on our shared server. I copied the folder. I saved it to the same encrypted, off-site drive where I was now storing the evidence of his Ponzi scheme, his arson, and his affair. I had it all. He thought he was a genius. He thought he was a master manipulator. He had forgotten, as everyone in my life seems to do, who I was. He had forgotten that my entire job was to find the one tiny, hidden lie that brings the whole house of cards crashing down. And he had just handed me the entire deck. I closed the laptop. The sun was coming up, painting the San Francisco skyline in shades of pink and gold. It was beautiful, and I was, for the first time, completely, utterly, and ruthlessly awake. The game was on. I didn't confront him. What was the point? I would yell, he would lie. He was a professional liar. No, you don't confront a con man. You con him. I played my part. That night, when he came home from dealing with the insurance adjusters, which I now knew meant talking to his mistress on his burner phone, I was the perfect, supportive, shattered wife. I had been crying. Easy to fake. I was just channeling my rage. I was pale. I was terrified. I did it, I whispered, my voice trembling as I met him at the door. I called the trust lawyers. I told them about the fire, the lawsuit, the emergency. I think I've found a way. He lit up. The grief and stress on his face vanished, replaced by a hungry, triumphant gleam in his eyes that he quickly tried to hide, pulling me into a hug. Oh my God, Clara. He breathed, his voice a perfect imitation of relieved gratitude. You did? You're saving us. You're saving me. What did they say? It's a loophole, I stammered, playing my part, letting him lead me to the couch. The, quote, preservation of marital assets clause, the one you found. They said it's possible. But it's complicated. It requires a lot of paperwork. I don't care, he said, his energy manic now. Whatever it takes. Just tell me what to do. I need to prove that Aura Ventures is a viable marital asset that's under temporary distress, I said, quoting the fake legal jargon I had spent all afternoon inventing. I need full access, Liam. To everything. The real books, the investor lists, the corporate accounts, the ones you always kept private. I need to build a case for the trust's board. I watched his face. This was the moment. Would his paranoia override his greed? He didn't even hesitate. His greed won, hands down. He thought I was a forensic accountant? No, he thought I was a gullible wife who just happened to be good with numbers. He saw me as a tool, a means to an end. Of course, he said, jumping up. Anything. Full transparency. You're my partner, right? I'll give you my admin passwords, the real ones, the ones my CFO uses. You can see everything. Just tell me what you need to build the case. We'll do it together. For the next week, I was a fox in the henhouse. I sat at my desk, my loving, supportive husband bringing me coffee, while I meticulously, and with his full permission and access, downloaded every single shred of incriminating evidence he had. The real books, which showed the Ponzi scheme. The real investor lists, which showed the victims. The real offshore bank records, which showed the money trail to his mistress. He wasn't just giving me access. He was helping me build the case against him, all while thinking I was building a case to save him. But I wasn't done. I needed to lock him in. The lawyers, they're still nervous, Liam, I said a few days later, rubbing my temples. They said this is all so irregular. They need a sign of good faith. From you. They need you to give me temporary signing authority. On everything. Aura Ventures. The shell accounts. Just as a formality. To show the board that you're being transparent, that I'm in control of the loan until it's repaid. He was so close to the $10 million, he could taste it. He was arrogant. He was desperate. And he was, above all, blinded by his own genius. Fine, he snapped, annoyed by the delay. Whatever. I'll sign. Just get it done, Clara. Get the money. He signed the papers. A full, ironclad, temporary power of attorney, drafted by my new lawyer, not Mr. Abernathy, but a corporate shark in New York who owed me a favor, giving me complete signing and transfer authority over Aura Ventures and all its known and unknown subsidiaries. He had just handed me the keys to his entire fraudulent kingdom. It's done, I told him a week later. I was exhausted, but my performance was flawless. The board approved the liquidation, $10 million. It's being wired to a new joint asset holding account, which I will then use to pay off the lawsuit and the fire damages. It's done, Liam. We're safe. He grabbed me and kissed me, a wet, triumphant, repulsive kiss. You did it, Clara. You did it. My God, you're incredible. We have to celebrate. This is a new beginning. It is, I said, my voice quiet. A new beginning. I'm throwing a party, he announced, his eyes glittering with that manic energy again. A gala. I'm going to invite everyone. The investors, the board, the press. I'm going to announce that Aura Ventures has secured a massive new round of funding, that we've weathered the storm, that we're back, bigger and better than ever. It'll be a triumph. It'll be our triumph. A party. A public celebration of his own con, funded by my money. It was perfect. That's a wonderful idea, Liam, I said, my voice full of fake admiration. You deserve it. No, babe, he said, grabbing my hand. We deserve it. And at the party, I want you to make the announcement, as my partner, as the quote angel investor who saved the company. I want everyone to know what you did for us. He was so arrogant, he was literally handing me the microphone. He was designing his own public execution and casting me as the guest of honor. I'd be honored, Liam, I whispered. The Aura Rebirth Gala was, even by San Francisco tech standards, absurd. He'd rented out the entire top floor of the city's most expensive hotel. Champagne flowed like water. A string quartet played. Hundreds of people were there. Tech reporters, venture capitalists, city politicians, all of them buzzing, eager to see the green titan rise from the ashes. Liam was in his element. He glided through the room, his arm possessively around my waist, his smile a blinding, million-dollar beacon of success. He introduced me to everyone. This is my wife, Clara, he'd say, his voice thick with a proprietary pride. My savior. The woman who never stopped believing in me. I just smiled, my hand linked in his, a perfect, supportive, loving mask. I could feel the cold, hard weight of the USB drive in my small, beaded clutch. Finally, the moment came. Liam tapped a champagne glass. The room fell silent. He took the stage, the spotlight hitting him perfectly. My friends, my partners, my believers, he began, his voice booming. This has been a challenging few months. There were rumors, doubts. There was a fire. A few sad, sympathetic murmurs from the crowd. But Aura Ventures is more than just a building. It's an idea. And that idea is stronger than ever, thanks to a massive new round of funding from a very, very special, an angel investor. We are back. The room erupted in applause. He beamed, raising his hands. And now, he said, his voice dropping to a low, emotional rumble, I want to introduce the woman who made this all possible. The heart of Aura Ventures. My partner, my love, my wife, Clara Walker. More applause. He reached his hand down, pulling me up onto the stage with him. He handed me the microphone, his eyes shining with tears of, well, I knew exactly what they were tears of. Greed. She has a few words for our new, bright future, he said, kissing me for the crowd. I stepped up to the microphone. The room was silent, expectant. I looked out at the sea of faces, the investors he had lied to, the partners he had betrayed. I looked at my husband, my proud, triumphant, fraudulent husband. Thank you, Liam, I said, my voice clear and steady, amplified by the speakers. That was a beautiful introduction. I smiled at him. He's right. I am the new angel investor. And as the new primary, well actually the sole, stakeholder of Aura Ventures, I do have a few announcements about our quote-quote bright future. Liam's smile faltered, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. He hadn't expected that title. What? What does she mean? I heard a board member whisper from the front row. My husband, I continued, my voice calm and professional, like I was addressing a boardroom, not a party, is a visionary. He's a brilliant storyteller. So brilliant, in fact, that his stories have been incredibly convincing. The story of Aura Ventures as a, quote, billion-dollar company. A masterpiece. The story of a frivolous lawsuit from an ex-partner? Compelling. The story of an accidental warehouse fire that tragically destroyed all his R&D? Positively cinematic. The room was dead silent now. Liam was no longer smiling. He took a step toward me, his hand reaching for the mic, his face pale. Clara, he hissed, his voice low. What are you doing? I'm just sharing the truth, darling, I said, turning my back to him, facing the crowd. It's what I, as the new owner of this company, am legally obligated to do. I gave a small nod to the AV booth in the back of the room. The massive screens on either side of the stage, which had been showing a tasteful, looping video of Aura Ventures' green technology, flickered to black. And then, a new image appeared. It was a bank transfer statement. From Aura Ventures to Solaris Investments, a shell corporation, for $2.5 million. My husband, I said, my voice ringing out, is a visionary. But he's not an engineer. He's a thief. For the last 4 years, he has been systematically siphoning millions of dollars from his investors' money, your money, into a series of offshore, personal shell corporations. The screen changed. A new statement. Aura Holdings, another $1.8 million. Walker Strategic, another $3 million. He's been running a classic Ponzi scheme, I continued, my voice cold and clear, using new investor money to pay off the old, all while funneling the rest into his own private accounts. That's a lie, Liam roared, grabbing for the other microphone, but the AV tech whom I had personally briefed and paid an hour earlier had already cut his feed. She's unstable. She's having a breakdown, am I? I asked. Or am I just, for the first time, sharing the results of my own audit? The screen changed again, this time to a photograph, a beautiful, sun-drenched photo from an Instagram account, of Liam on a yacht, his arm around a stunning, 28-year-old blonde. This, I said, is Catherine Price, his mistress. And this, the screen changed again, showing a wire transfer, is the $5.5 million Aura funds he used to buy her this lovely condo in Miami Beach. He wasn't raising capital in Asia. He was in St. Bart's. A collective, horrified gasp went through the room. I saw 2 of his primary investors, a pair of stone-faced venture capitalists, get up from their table and head straight for the exit, their phones already pressed to their ears. And the fire, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. The tragic fire? It wasn't an accident. It was arson. The screen changed, a grainy black and white image. A security cam still from the warehouse, time-stamped 3 a.m., the night of the fire. It showed 2 men in dark clothes, carrying gasoline cans. A fire he paid for, to destroy the evidence. The, quote, evidence, of course, being the fact that the R&D lab was empty. There is no revolutionary technology. There are no prototypes. The entire company, it was all vaporware. It was all a lie. I looked at Liam. He was gray. His face was a mask of pure, abject terror. He was cornered. And finally, I said, his last, most desperate con. The screen changed. A scan of a document, a contingency plan, a plan to have me, his wife, the one person he thought he could fool, declared emotionally unstable and incompetent, so he could seize control of my $40 million family trust. I turned and looked at him, my husband. He didn't just marry me for my money, I said, my voice shaking with a cold, clear fury. He married me as a plan B, as an exit strategy, as the final gullible mark he could rob when his first con finally fell apart. I let that sink in. The room was silent, a tomb. So yes, I said, Liam is right. This is a new beginning for Aura Ventures. As the new, sole, and legal owner, having just acquired all company assets and liabilities via the power of attorney, he so graciously signed over to me this week. I held up the signed POA document. My first act as CEO is to officially dissolve the company, effective immediately. My second act, I continued, as Liam made a choked, gagging sound, is to announce that all remaining assets, which I have already, in the last 24 hours, transferred to a secure, third-party, court-supervised account, will be used to repay the real victims of this fraud, Mr. Mark Jensen and the other original investors. I looked at the stunned, horrified crowd. And my third act? I smiled. I'm filing for divorce. And, as per the catastrophic infidelity clause in our prenup, I get to keep the house and the jet. I placed the microphone gently on the podium. I didn't look at Liam. I didn't look at his mistress, who was, I saw, being physically restrained at the exit by hotel security. I just walked. I walked off that stage, through the silent, parting sea of San Francisco's elite, and I never, not once, looked back. The aftermath was total. It wasn't just a scandal. It was an implosion. The Aura Rebirth Gala became the Aura Death Spiral, and it was the lead story in every tech and financial journal for weeks. The stock, which had been trading on pure hype, went to zero overnight. The SEC, which had been asking questions, was now leading a full-blown criminal investigation. My presentation, which had been recorded by at least 100 different smartphones, was leaked to the press within the hour. My performance was dubbed the most brutal, elegant, and long overdue corporate takedown in Silicon Valley history. And Liam? He was arrested. Not at the gala. I hadn't wanted to give him that satisfaction. He was arrested the next morning, at our penthouse, in his bathrobe, as he was frantically and pathetically trying to stuff cash into a duffel bag. The charges: wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy to commit arson, and, thanks to my testimony, embezzlement. He was facing, the DA told me, 25 to life. His mistress, Catherine, was also arrested as a co-conspirator. It turned out she wasn't just a kept woman. She was an active participant, the one who had managed the offshore shell accounts. I spent the next 6 months in a legal hurricane, but this time, it was on my terms. I was no longer the victim. I was the star witness. I was the forensic accountant who had, with my own access and my own skills, built the entire ironclad case for the prosecution. I sat in that courtroom, in my old, familiar prosecutor suit, and I calmly, methodically, and without a single shred of emotion, walked the jury through the complex, multi-year, multi-million-dollar fraud my husband had perpetrated. I presented his ledgers, his shell corporations, and, as the final devastating exhibit, his own handwritten journal outlining his plan to have me committed. When his lawyer tried to cross-examine me, tried to paint me as a scorned woman, a vindictive wife, I just smiled. "Mr. Harris," I said calmly, "are you suggesting that my husband's handwritten confession of his plan to defraud me and have me involuntarily committed is my fault? That I am the one on trial here? Or is it perhaps that your client is just a very, very stupid criminal who was arrogant enough to not only defraud a forensic accountant, but to marry her?" The jury was out for less than an hour. Guilty. On all counts, Liam was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. Catherine, for her cooperation, got 10. With the criminal trial over, I turned my attention to the financial wreckage. As the new, court-appointed receiver for the now-defunct Aura Ventures, I spent the next year of my life doing exactly what I had promised, liquidating every single asset. The penthouse, the jet, the cars, the Miami condo, the art, the stupid, expensive office furniture. I clawed back every single stolen dollar. And then, I, as the head of the Victims' Compensation Fund, began to write the checks. My first check was to Mark Jensen, the original partner, for the full, multi-million-dollar amount Liam had stolen from him, plus interest. The man, when I met him, just wept. He'd lost his house, his family, his reputation. You didn't have to do this," he whispered. "I know," I said, "but I wanted to." I paid back every single legitimate investor, one by one, until the fund was empty. It took me almost 2 years, but by the end, I had done it. I had cleaned up the mess. I had, in a way, finally, truly, fixed it. My life is quiet now, and I mean that in the best possible way. After the final check was written, after the Aura Ventures case was officially closed, I quit. I resigned from my own self-made position as the Queen of the Ashes. I took my $40 million trust, my own money, which had remained, as my grandfather intended, untouched and untouchable, and I just disappeared. I didn't stay in San Francisco. I couldn't. The city was haunted. I moved to a small, quiet coastal town in Oregon, a place that smells of pine and salt and rain, a place where no one knows the name Clara Walker or Clara the Avenger, as the tech blogs had so dramatically dubbed me. I'm just Clara. I used my old skills, my forensic accounting background, for something new. I started a small, pro bono foundation, the Phoenix Project. We help women, mostly victims of financial abuse or domestic betrayal, untangle their lives. We provide forensic accountants, lawyers, and therapists, all for free. We help them find the hidden accounts, trace the stolen assets, and build their own cases. It's the most satisfying work I have ever done. I live in a small, cedar-shingled house on a cliff overlooking the ocean. It's not a penthouse. It's not a mansion. It's just a home. It's quiet. It's safe. And it's mine. And Liam? He writes me. From prison. Once a month. Like clockwork. Long, rambling, 10-page letters. Full of, I don't even know. Remorse, self-pity, manipulation. I don't read them. They go, unopened, into a box. A new archive. Maybe one day, I'll be curious enough to read them. But not today. Last week, a letter arrived, not from him, but from my old, retired law school professor, a woman I had admired, who had taught my ethics in accounting class. Dear Ms. Walker, she wrote, I have been following your career with great interest, first as a brilliant analyst, then as the subject of a terrible scandal, and now as the founder of the Phoenix Project. I must say, of all the students I have ever taught, you are the only one who seems to have truly understood the meaning of the word forensic. It is not just about the numbers. It is about the truth. Congratulations. You've made an old woman very proud. I cried, for the first time in years. Not tears of rage or grief, but tears of relief. I had finally, after all this time, closed the books on my old life. I'm 40 now. I've been running the Phoenix Project for 5 years. It's my life's work. We've helped over 100 women reclaim their lives, their assets, their futures. We've become a national resource, a name whispered in divorce law offices and women's shelters across the country. And my own trust, the $40 million, it's still there. My grandfather's chastity belt. I haven't touched a dime of the principal. I live on my salary as the head of my own foundation, a salary I pay myself from the interest of the trust. It's a beautiful, perfect, closed loop. I was in my office last month, a small, bright space above a bookstore, when my assistant buzzed me. A Ms. Price is here to see you, she said, her voice confused. She doesn't have an appointment. My blood ran cold. Catherine Price, the mistress, the artist, the woman who had, for her part in the conspiracy, served 10 years in prison. I hadn't seen or heard from her since the day she was sentenced. Send her in, I said, my voice quiet. She walked in. She was different. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple, worn dress. The arrogant, glittering confidence was gone, replaced by a deep, weary stillness. She was in her late 30s now, but she looked older, her face etched with lines of hardship and regret. Clara, she said, her voice a low, rough rasp. Thank you for seeing me. I'm not Clara anymore, I said, not unkindly. I go by Ms. Reed, my mother's name. Ms. Reed, she nodded. I wanted to see you. To say, I'm sorry. Sorry? I asked, leaning back in my chair. Sorry for what, exactly? For the affair? For the conspiracy? For the 5 years of my life you all stole? Yes, she said, her eyes meeting mine, and they were, for the first time, clear. For all of it. But mostly, for him. For not seeing what he was. I was a fool. I believed his stories too. I thought we were partners. I thought he was a genius. I was just as big a mark as you were. Just in a different way. You went to prison, Catherine, I said quietly. I did. She nodded. And I deserved to. I was greedy. I was weak, and I paid for it. I'm out now. I'm a paralegal. In a small town. I'm trying to rebuild. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, lumpy, hand-knit something. A scarf? I made this, she said, her voice trembling. It's not much. It's all I have. But I wanted to give you something. To say, I'm sorry. For all the taking. She placed the lumpy, slightly uneven, but clearly handmade scarf on my desk. I looked at her, this woman who had been my rival, my husband's mistress, my co-conspirator, and I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel anything, really. Just a profound, quiet sadness for the wreckage men like Liam leave in their wake. Thank you, Catherine, I said, picking up the scarf. It was surprisingly soft. I accept your apology. She looked relieved. Her shoulders, which had been tensed up to her ears, finally dropped. Thank you, she whispered. She turned to leave. Catherine, I said, stopping her at the door. She turned back. My foundation, I said, is always looking for good, smart paralegals with unique life experiences, especially in our financial abuse division. The pay is terrible, but the work is good. Her eyes filled with tears, for the first time. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, I said, giving her a small, tired smile. Just email my assistant your resume. We'll be in touch. She nodded, unable to speak, and walked out. I was left alone in my office, the lumpy, hand-knit scarf in my hands. I hadn't just gotten my revenge. I hadn't just gotten my money back. I had, in the strangest, most unexpected way. I had finally fixed something. And it was a foundation that I knew, this time, would last.